Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Stargirl, Season 1, Episode 11. It's called Shining Knight. So, full spoilers for the episode, as always. So, very much the... It's not the penultimate episode, but it kind of feels like it, because the last two are two-parter, and...
It's definitely going into the end game.
Yeah, and I feel like it's kind of the perfect episode to set up the finale, with the finale being the two-parter rather than just the last one, right? Because it slowed things down. Obviously, the last episode was a lot of big things happening, big dramatic finish, all that stuff, and this episode had the aftermath of that. It had a lot of quieter beats. It was dealing with some of the more personal stuff that we've been kind of dealing with all season, with Courtney, with some others. Introduced sort of not introduced, but brought the Shiny Knight stuff, the janitor stuff, into a bit more of the limelight. Which is kind of obvious given the title, but kind of left us on this really kind of uplifting moment of like, no, maybe we can actually, like, they can actually fight back, they can actually do something, there's a bit of hope.
Yeah. And then immediately followed that up with, but they're in the shit as well.
Yes, I mean, it also followed up with maybe one of the darkest villain scenes of the season. So so first thing I want to talk about, though, is the genius bit of casting and makeup and like hair and whatever, where they got a guy who when he turned, because it obviously does the whole intro where you see like from just behind, I'm coming in the bus, and he's got the locket and he's walking through the street.
They're really playing it, and it's like just enough where you go, this could be Joel McHale. And I really felt it when someone walked past him and said good morning, and he just nothing, because they didn't want us to hear his voice yet.
And he just, when he turns around after we sort of build up to him and we see him, I actually laughed out loud, because I'm like, you know what, this is as close to Joel McHale as you could have gotten without him having a twin brother.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's enough that, okay, going back to the photos we were talking about last week, okay, one of them, the John McHale one's still too clear. If you gave me two genuinely grainy photos, I might buy it.
Yeah, the one in our locket that's all faded out, that you can't really see properly. Like, I buy that. That's this guy.
Yeah,
and I equally bought it with Joel McHale beforehand. So, and I'm sure a lot of this will just be how they did his hair, and they made him have a little bit of stubble, and just enough to, not that Joel McHale always has stubble, because he doesn't, but
but enough that it covers any. It rounds out the bottom of the face to an equal degree, where if you put the same sort of hair on Joel McHale, it would look pretty similar. It
blurs the facial structure a little bit. It's a natural blur, as it were.
It's pretty much why beards exist in general.
Yes. That's not why beards exist.
It kind of is. From a sociological point of view.
They exist to keep your face warm, because we used to.
From a sociological point of view, they exist to to change the shape of faces.
Yeah, but the biology doesn't care about the social point of view, right? Like, all that's important is that the beard is supposed to keep your face warm. It's not as relevant now because we have indoor heating. It's more of a stylistic choice now, or a lazy choice, perhaps, for some.
Yeah, that's true.
But yes. Shut up. So this episode has obviously Courtney meeting this guy, who is her father. What was his name? Who was like
Sam Curtis, who in the comics is a member of the Royal Flush Gang.
Do you see them bringing him back as a villain later? Also, did you know that off the top of your head, or did you look up Sam Curtis?
No, I had a vague memory of the name, and then double checked. Turns out the character was also actually created by Johns, so playing with his own stuff here again.
Interesting. So Corey doesn't really like the idea that this is him. I kind of love the reaction of the adults in the room as they're hearing this. Because Barb didn't want him to show up. She was kind of reaching out to kind of like, I guess for her own sake, confirm who he is and just make sure that it's not actually Starman. Like,
just make sure he's still alive and be like, okay, good.
Yeah, just sort of clear it up for herself. But he shows up, and they're in the house, and they're all kind of reacting. It's kind of awkward. Courtney's not really wanting to believe any of this. I kind of like the small moment where Barb just kind of nods a little bit to just make it clear, no, this is him. Like, just this is happening. This is who this is. And she's not very happy about it. And I think what this episode does is that I felt bad for Mike. Although Mike does have the one scene where they kind of address the fact that now that Barb is in and everything, Mike is this odd one out in the family who has no idea what's going on.
Last man standing.
And he just feels like he's been alienated from everything. Because we have, Barb and Pat down in the basement with her at the start of the episode, and they're talking about, okay, so Icicle, or it's not Icicle, Brainwave.
Brainwave.
Just get into the right villain. Right. Brainwave killed his own son last night, and it's this, and Barb's like, what should we do? And Pat's actually saying, no, you should run. The idea was great. Even though you believe me now, you're not mad at me anymore, you should run. You should run. And
just go. Take Mike too.
But if you're not, then you should try and act normal, because if they suspect that you're acting weird because you know something's up, then that puts you in danger. So you either run or you pretend that everything's completely okay and nothing's afoot.
I mean, he's right.
So that becomes kind of the plan. I actually, one of the things I was laughing about in this episode is that when Courtney comes back up, and because I like the idea that when she's getting mad and storming off, she wants to talk to Pat. She says, I want to talk to Pat. And Pat gets Barb's kind of like permission to like go and do that right now.
Yeah, like from her point of view, it's her mother's just sprung this on her. And Barb knows that's not quite true, but she's like, no, I get where she's coming from. Yeah. I'll let you handle this.
Yeah, and of course the reason why she wants to talk to Pat is partly because it's like, wait, I thought I was Starman's daughter. If I'm not Starman's daughter, then what the hell's going on? Why is any of this happening? And this is kind of the episode that answers. I mean, obviously we knew this all season, or at least we heavily suspected all season, but kind of knew. It was that really the staff just chose her because she's to use a Thor term, she's worthy. She's worthy of the staff.
Pretty much. Yeah.
And he like they're suggesting these things back and forth, and this is the scene that Mike comes in and kind of is like, wait, this is weird. Did I do something wrong? Why am I being left out of everything? Because Pat gets angry at him at first for kind of butting in. He's like, no, go to your room, leave us alone, not right now, Mike. And then he gets like, what did I do wrong? What have I done? and Pat genuinely, he realizes what he sounds like, and he's like, oh, okay, Mike, seriously, you've done nothing wrong. Everything's cool. Just
on that note, and there's a lot of points like this in this episode. His acting this week is fantastic.
Pat?
Yeah.
Wilson specifically.
yeah, obviously.
He is quite good this week. There's several scenes with several different characters and several plot lines, in fact, that I thought he was quite good on.
He is the anchor of this episode for sure.
And one of my favourite things in TV is when you have the shitty father figure, but then you have a great surrogate father figure.
It's a classic, isn't it?
It's it's because by the time we get to like the end of the real dad plot in this episode, like all I could think was, and it's not the exact same thing, but in the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, when Buffy's dad comes to visit in season 1, now admittedly there's a supernatural reason why everyone's been such a dick, but he's really awful to her and it really upsets her. So it was hard not to kind of get like not so much that it was reminding me of that moment specifically, but the moment made me think, oh yeah, Pat's Giles in this. Like Pat is straight up Giles. He's the surrogate father that becomes a much better father figure than a real dad ever could be.
And I'm glad we've got that on these shows again, because in the early seasons of The Flash, Joe West was fantastic in that role.
Yeah.
And he was always good, to be fair, continuing on. They just, had less for him to do after a while. And then that wasn't, there wasn't a shitty dad in the scenario in that case. But in terms of the surrogate father being, really particularly great.
Henry, if anything, on The Flash was not the shitty father. He was very much a victim of
he was
everything around him. But yeah, so obviously there was a lot of heartstrings being pulled during this episode. And I wasn't so much that I was loving the scenes with Courtney and her father. When he takes her to breakfast, and there
were the scenes that you have to do.
Yeah, and it was kind of like, okay, it depends. It really depends where we end up with this plot, whether or not I thought this was worth the time on it. And it actually turned out it was, because the ending I thought was really good. But I started laughing over the course of the episode because when Courtney said, or when the dad says, "Hey, can we go and talk for a minute?" and Barb's like, "No, she has to go to school." And Courtney's like, just a quick talk is fine, Mum. He's like, no, you know why you have to go to school, which I like because it's tying into the actual serious plot right now.
She's terrified.
Yeah, we have to act normal. But she's like, it's fine. Like, just let me go. I'll be late. It's not a big deal. And they go for, breakfast, and they're bonding a little bit. He's asking her about her life and whatever. But then they come back. So I was laughing, though, because as it goes on, like, she's out. Because first of all, it's just a walk. And then he's like, hey, do you want to get breakfast? Just 30 minutes. And I'm like, that's being late for school's getting pretty late. And I laughed a lot when they eventually come back, and there's a whole emotional thing that happens back at the house. And she's back in the house. Pat goes and confronts him, and then Courtney's like, I should get to school. I'm like, wait, what time is it? What time is it by now? What's the point?
Do you know what? I was really feeling that at the end. I feel like they really played fast and loose intentionally. Because there's the scene where we cut to Jordan at the end, where it plays it like it's the middle of the night. It's all dark and he's turning on the lamp in the office. And I'm like, sure, the blinds are shut, whatever. But it really plays it like so much time has passed.
But clearly she made it in time for lunch, which I guess yeah, that you can go in for your last few periods if that's if you feel important about it.
To be fair, I think a lot of reasonable schools would be understanding in a scenario like this.
Oh sure, yeah.
Not all of them, just a lot of them would.
But I have to admit, if I was Courtney, once it's like after 10 a.m, I'm like, you know what, there's no point going in now. It's too late. It's too late. If I'm not making it in the first hour, it's an off day.
I gotta get that. Yeah. It may or may not have happened once or twice. I may have slept in till 9:30 once or twice and gone, screw it.
That's too late now. If you're missing registration, there's no point going in.
I think in my last year at school, I think I made it on time for registration maybe 6 times in the entire year.
Oh dear.
I got a lot of shit for that.
No wonder. So the breakfast is whatever, and it comes back, and they mention the locket a couple of times because he's got one too, and he gave her one, and he brings it up a couple of times, and it kind of plays on its own in a fine way because it's kind of like this is like he's trying to bond over the one thing that she has from him, the one thing that connects them.
And it works because even before we see his face on the bus, he's got his locket, he has it open, he's looking at the picture of her as a baby, and
yeah.
It plays it like it means something to him.
Yeah. And it all kind of bubbles up to Shitty TV Dad 101, where he's actually there for a really selfish reason that's nothing to do with actually connecting with his daughter.
Yeah,
and
I want to be annoyed at it for being cliche, but it was really good.
It was a really well done scene, and I'll tell you why it was well done. And he's the actor playing Sam's fine in the scene, but it's her. It's all in her reaction. That is what makes the entire scene work. Because I think what worse about it is because he tells her this story that, like, hey, these 2 lockets are a set and they were made for like stars. Like, and he mentions, I think it was Marilyn Monroe he mentioned, but it was like famous people would get these lockets made. So they're actually worth a bit of money, and I could probably put a deposit in a house if I sold these. And I think what makes this scene work so well is that Courtney, not even for a second, is believing this. She knows exactly, like, her reaction on her face says she understands exactly what's happening right now. And when she makes the choice to give him the locket, it's not because she's buying into his bullshit. It's because, well, this will just put an end to this, and this can be it now.
She's just, giving up on him as a person. And I think it works because she is buying into it during the breakfast, where she's like, oh, you can come visit me, and we'll spend some time together. And at that point, she should be buying into it, because it seems genuine enough at that point. But as soon as he asks for the locket and is talking about money, she knows, as we do, right? If we hadn't suspected already.
Yeah.
But that's the damning moment, and I appreciate that it doesn't have the character, be more drawn out than it needs to be for the sake of drama.
If anything, it makes it more nuanced. That she clearly understands what she's doing, and it feels like the choice she's making is a choice that's informed by what it actually is, and not like her still believing in something that isn't going to happen. And it's it is this kind of hard-hitting little thing, because this is the one thing she had from her father that she clung to, that she believed in, and
like I said, she's worn it every day of her life.
Yeah, and he just wants to take this one thing. The only thing he's ever given her, he never gave her a life. He ran, when she was 5 years old or 6 years old. It would have been.
I think it was 6.
Yeah. He is typical runaway father, like 101, and the one thing he ever gave her, he wants back, because he might be able to sell it for some money. Like, he's the worst of the worst. And when she goes inside, and she's looking a bit distraught, and Pat walks in and says, look, if you need to yell at someone, I get you're probably going through a lot of stuff, I can take it. And you can kind of see it coming, but it doesn't matter. It still hurts, or it doesn't hurts, but it pulls the heartstrings all the same, when instead of yelling at him to get out of her emotion, which would have been a fine scene if that's the way it went, but she doesn't. She just walks up and hugs Pat and sort of embraces him for the father figure that he actually is, when she's been kind of like, she was so anti-Pat. Back in the first couple episodes, you go back, she was dead set against Pat.
There was a point, I don't know if it was exactly here or a little bit after, towards the end of this episode, where it was like, she could call him dad for the first time and I'd buy it.
Yeah. And she doesn't actually need to. Like, I think she's old enough when she met him, when he came into her life, that I totally buy if she never, refers to him as dad.
Not on like a regular day-to-day basis. I can see her doing it, once just for him, like to let him know.
Oh, sure. I can see it being the sort of thing she maybe never says to him, but it's the sort of thing where, like, see, after
maybe
he dies...
Stop referring to him as, stepdad, and just call him as a dad when she introduces him to someone.
Sure, that's not the point I was going at all, though. What I was going to say is that it could be the sort of thing where, like, after he dies, at his funeral, she'll refer to him as her father. Like, it's the kind of thing where she'll not use it in general conversation necessarily, but for the emotional speeches, or for when it really matters, or for when she's trying to, like, really make a point, she'll acknowledge that that's kind of what he is, and she'll whip it out. It's it's kind of like when Bruce died in the comics and Alfred referred to him as his son, like, kind of moments like that where, I think it's when Superman asks, like, how are you doing? He's like, I'm not so well, I just lost my son. It's those kind of beats where it really hits hard, because it's like, yeah, maybe they didn't even think about it that much, but now that they've been forced with the prospect of losing the person, it's like, no, that person was my father, that person was my son, whatever it may be, in essence, if not in literal blood. Yes. But whatever.
But it's where we all know. Yeah. They all know as well.
So, no, that scene was beautiful, and I loved that Barb got to see it. Like, I think, there was something I think important about Barb actually walking in and seeing this part, because, like, any of her anger that was still kind of, like, there, even though she sort of realized a lot of what was being said was true about everything, like, Pat's been sort of doing in secret with Courtney and all this stuff, I think seeing this and seeing what he's been to her, like, and how Courtney now sees him, is like, nah, this family ain't breaking up. If there was a chance, no, she's just seen that, no, there's a glue holding all this together that should be crazy to, especially since she's just seen what her ex, Courtney's actual father is like his presence the entire time, and she doesn't say a lot about him, but she clearly says a couple of times, I know who he is, I know what he is, and that kind of thing. I didn't even need Pat running after him to tell me to piss off. I didn't need that scene.
But it was satisfying anyway.
Yeah, and of course he's a complete douchebag who, not only does he say something nasty about Barb in a sort of dick measuring way, he also, when Pat says they'll never come back here again, he says,
wasn't
what was planning to, which just is like, oh, right, so it's like you're not even lying to yourself that you might actually want to get to know Courtney, you've already made that choice.
Yeah, and then Pat punches him one and is like, yeah, you're lucky I'm busy.
Yeah, because that's the thing, there was so much we're talking about here, but we've actually not even mentioned the fact that Shining Knight goes to see Pat because he's having visions, and he's trying to get his steed, his loyal white steed with the fire. The farmer's like chasing him off, but he sees the advert, the flyer for the mechanic, with Pat's
and he remembers
stupid head.
Stripesy.
Yeah, and he goes to see him, and I thought was beautiful about the writing in this episode is that, when he goes to see him and he's clearly confused, he's seeing like Dragon King and two of Dragon King's minions, and the others are kind of like freaking out, maybe we should do something, whatever. Pat realizes who he is, and then it's later when he's actually in the house, and Barb being on and everything's actually kind of nice, because she's like, oh yeah, I'll make a bed for him, like he needs help, like we'll help your old friend here. Is that when they start talking about him being confused and he doesn't remember like who he is, what's so beautiful about it is that in between all this plot, there's a scene between Brainwave and Icicle, and it's basically, and this is obviously something we knew had to be coming, where Brainwave's like, hey, by the way, I know who Stargirl is that Courtney Whitmore. Also, her stepdad, Stripesy, Starman's old little chum, so I'm going to go kill them right now. And Icicle's like, no, wait. And they start debating, because obviously he doesn't want, he's clearly into Barb, but he doesn't want Barb to be killed. But one of the beautiful things about this in relation to the other plot is that Brainwave says, well, how about I just erase the memory of her daughter, and that way, she's yours for the taking, she won't remember her husband or her daughter. And he says, no, I don't want you doing that, because no one's quite the same after you've done that. So when it cuts back to the Shining Knight stuff, and they start talking about how he doesn't remember who he is, something happened to him, not only is it really good because it immediately triggers, like, in your head that, oh wait, Brainwave did this to him. Brainwave took his memories. That's why he's so confused and doesn't know anything. But it also adds this sadness to it, and there's this sadness to him trying to remember who he is. And I'm like, you know what? At the start of this episode, I wasn't so sure how much I was going to care about the resolution to this Shining Knight stuff. But by the time he's sort of like get kind of sad and he's in the living room and he's kind of like almost crying because he can't remember who he is, I was like, damn, I actually really kind of care about what they've done to him now.
It's really touching, and this is again, Wilson's great acting, and this is every time he has to de-escalate this whole situation and just be comforting to this, this person, who's there having this breakdown. It's like just it's like, just tell us the story. You tell such good stories. And then so he tells him, okay, tell us a story that you're familiar with, that you've told 1,000 times.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of get him into the groove of it, and then okay, so instead of just asking him what happened, it's like, well, just tell us the story of what happened and try and process it that way. And he does a great job with it.
And what's so good about it is that he's talking about the Dragon King, but he's expressing it in the way you would tell a fairy tale, whereas like, I was hunting the dragon because the dragon had, all the other soldiers were all gone, I mean the 7 soldiers, but the dragon still had to be slayed. He's talking about the Dragon King, it doesn't get to the end of the story, but it doesn't take a whole lot there to leap to, well, whatever conflict happened when he came to Blue Valley to find him, Brainwave clearly wiped his memory, and that's why he is what he is right now. So, really strong stuff. It's one of these episodes where I wasn't sure how good any of it was going to be when it started, but everything built up to something that really clicked. It really, whether it was emotional or it was whatever. And it's it's not too long after the shitty Sam dad leaves that Courtney goes into the basement and she tries to pick up the staff and it doesn't react, and it's like she's like, well, I guess this is over, I can't do this. And she does go to school. This is where she says, oh, I better get to school. I'm like, what time is it? So much has happened. What time is it?
It's been a long day. And to be fair, it establishes so early on how early it is, because when the doorbell rings, they're like, it's not even 7. And Mike's up and he's like, and they're like, what are you doing? It's like, oh, paper route, remember?
I believe the line was, this was your idea. This is why I'm up.
Yeah, but again, it's establishing, no, this is way earlier than normal.
It is, yeah, it's super early. And she goes to school and and the episode's really sad at this point because it's right after she's tried to pick up the staff and it's not working. So even just at cutting to the cafeteria and we see the other 3 sitting there at their table and the camera's just sort of slowly tracking in, I think it is, and waiting for Courtney to sit down. There's kind of like it almost feels like you're at a funeral where like they're about to get bad news and it feels like things are at their worst. And she sits down, she's like, I'm not Stargirl. And they all say sensible things to her. They're like, well, my dad's not Wildcat and I'm Wildcat. So what the hell? And it's all it's all good stuff. And it's actually the assembly where, and this is the Henry stuff coming back in where I mean, obviously clearly the public don't know how he died, but he is dead. And they know,
I think whatever the cover story is, some sort of accident.
And his dad, Henry Senior, is there, Brainwave's there, and he's telling.
This makes sense again for him to be talking there on his behalf, so to speak.
And he's making a speech, and it happened the opposite way as I thought it was going to, because when he started making the speech, and the camera sort of hones in on our 4 characters, Courtney and the other JSA members in the crowd, and they're obviously feeling uneasy because they know what he did, they saw what he did. And it's different for them than it is everyone else. I actually thought there was going to be a moment here where Courtney would intentionally try and talk to him, like in her mind, like, I know you can hear me kind of thing. It's actually the opposite. He starts talking to her and be like, because he says like, oh, I don't blame any of you here. He's like, except you. It's your fault.
Yeah, and she looks terrified.
Yeah. But this is the inspiration she needs. It cuts to her immediately going back into the basement at home and pick up the staff, almost pleading with it. Like, no, I need my powers back. Because the previous scene in the basement, she says to her mum, like, we can leave whenever you're ready, mum. Like, it doesn't matter anymore. I can't do this. Like, I don't have these powers anymore. I can't,
But here, she's afraid, I think, is the primary motivation here. It's the fear of what's going to happen to her and her friends without the powers. Not this desire to be a hero and stop everything. She's just scared for herself and her friends at this point, I think.
Yeah, she has to stop him. She has to stop whatever he's doing. And we know as viewers that he outright wants to kill her and her mum and Pat, right? So, and it doesn't work. And Pat comes down, or Pat's already there, I think, when she storms in, and he starts talking to her. He's like, "Hey, look, the staff would have always known you weren't Starman's daughter. That's not why it picked you. It picked you because it believed in you. And maybe the reason why it's not working right now is because you don't believe in yourself. It's just waiting for you to believe." And both Pat and Barb leave, and then Courtney comes out a minute later and says, "It's not working. I want both of you to be there." So, and it's kind of notable that she's like saying, "I need both of you there. It's not just Pat who knows all this stuff. It's not just my actual mum. Both of you."
And there's a point here that it ties back in with the Shining Knight plot as well, because one of the lines Pat tells her is that I think anyone can be a hero, or whatever the exact phrasing was, but it was the ending of Shining Knight's story of how he got Excalibur.
Yeah. So again, thematically, it ties the things together, which is really nice. And she picks it up, and of course, and this is the big sort of, barring the one little scene at the end and the other stuff sprinkled throughout, this is the end of the episode, and it does light up, and it lights up brighter than it's ever lit, where both Pat and Barb are having to look away, and the lights in the background are basically blowing, or the bulbs are blowing.
Yeah, it's got all the the spinning shot of it going around.
Yeah. It's really bringing out all the color, because she's not wearing a costume, but she's wearing like a blue shirt. It's kind of the Power Rangers rules where
but it pops.
Yeah, she has to always be wearing blue and red because that's her colors.
Which I don't think that's actually true on this show. I just think you notice it in this scene.
I feel like she's always at least wearing some blue. She might not always be wearing red and white as well, but there's always some blue, I think.
Possibly, I'd have to go back and check.
Yeah,
you could be onto something.
I feel
it hasn't been like this like really obvious same shade of blue every time. It's been like a natural costuming design.
Yeah, or maybe sometimes it's been red instead of blue. Maybe they always just pick one of those instead. But I feel like it's always been, they've never just thrown around like green and pink. Like I'm willing to bet you money on this.
No, that's fair. You could be onto it, but it's. I think the point here is it's felt done in a really natural way, where you haven't been noticing. Oh, she's always in her colors. It's done like no, she's dressing like a normal person.
Yeah. So. No, and Shiny Knight kind of sees, like, he comes down and sees this, and they notice he's watching, and and what's the line he says? He says something like a hero emerges, or
a queen emerges.
A queen emerges. That's what it was. Yeah. And so it's kind of the uplifting. Like, okay, she's got her mojo back. Like everyone's on board. Barb's even kind of believing that her daughter might actually have to be a hero to like save everyone, because Barb, being a good person, actually wants to stop all the villains from doing bad things.
She's no longer just we could run away and save us, but that doesn't really stop the problem.
No, especially since Pat's kind of putting together that there's some sort of mass brainwashing thing that's going to happen. He doesn't know the exact details, but he knows enough to kind of put the pieces in place. To be fair,
he knows about as much as we do, and I'd say we know about as much as we know the mass brainwashing. We don't know the exact particulars either here, but he's kind of just putting it together more or less where we are.
Yeah. So yeah, I really like. So there's a couple of scenes, obviously, with Icicle. There's the one where he's with Brainwave and he doesn't want Barb to be killed. He reacts to Courtney's name when he says that Stargirl, of course, which I liked. And then he goes sort of snooping to see if, does Barb know anything. And he phones up the IT people in the building and says, hey, unlock Barb's, computer, restore her history. And unfortunately, and that's actually, it doesn't feel too contrived either, because the last time we saw her in the office, she was looking up lots of stuff to do because she'd just found out about all this stuff with Courtney and the Starman stuff. So it wasn't too contrived that her most recent searches were all Starman and Icicle and...
Yeah, that was, I think, in the context of the show, only the day before.
Yes.
So, and she left the office pretty quickly, so it's not really a surprise that this is the case.
No, it's one of those things where it could be contrived, but I don't think in this case that it was. But the scene at the end where this is kind of confirmed that she's kind of onto what he's doing, and he walks into the lair at the end, and Brainwave's just kind of sauntering around. He doesn't even say anything, but you just hear that little high pitched like noise that lets you know he's reading someone's mind, and he's like, "Oh, I'm glad you made the right choice. Yes, I will take care of it." And there's this really dark part where but Brainwave's about to leave to go and kill, Courtney, Pat, and Barb. And Icicle stops him and says, "The boy too. Make sure he dies." And not only is it really dark that he's saying also kill Mike, because Mike is so innocent, it has nothing to do with anything that's going on, right? The line he uses as a JSA fan is like, "We can't have a legacy running around." It touched the button. I was like, yeah.
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 That's kind of, for us as fans of the JSA comics, especially from the 2000s onwards, legacy is the key element of those stories. That is the defining trait.
And in this show especially, all the characters are all legacy, even if they didn't come from characters. They're all new versions. They're all
new iterations of the hero. Yeah. There are, I think, Pat is the only original really, and even he is kind of just a sidekick growing up at this point.
Yeah, really good stuff. The last two episodes are called Stars and Stripe, parts 1 and 2. It feels like the perfect name for your two-parter. I think
I kind of would have just called them, the first one Stars and the second one Stripe, and then we can just put them together as Stars and Stripe, as when we're pairing them naturally.
I think there was already an episode called Stripe at the start of the season.
I think there was
episode 2. I think
they
was
wasted
Stripe.
that then.
Yeah.
Wasted it.
So, I we've been continually more impressed with the season. I think in this back half of the show, probably from the middle point onwards. Ever since that Sportsmaster and Tigress episode, it's basically been nothing but climbing upwards.
From strength to strength. Yeah.
And I feel like this episode is a real good indication of it. And it's not so much that it's better than some of the best episodes that we've had this season, or even last week's episode, but I think the fact that this being a low-key episode that's here to set up the finale again, I mean the two-parter.
The two-part, yeah.
Is that the fact that this was as good as it was, and I was so into the final couple scenes, both from the hero's side, where it's like, yeah, she's got the staff again, and she believes in herself, so yeah, hero moment, right? And then on the villain side, like them saying, nah, and kill the kid too. I'm like, god damn. Like, I was so into both of those scenes, and I got so excited about where it was going. I'm like, I really like how quality this pulpy superhero teen show is gotten, and like, man, the CW better not ruin this. They better not ruin this next season.
I'm so with you on that. And like I say, I think last week's episode was probably better than this one. But like I say, this is a low key episode that in a lesser show I'd be like, sure, it's a fine episode. But I came out of this and going, oh man, that was still great. Like I loved everything in it. Like all the plots were, absolutely, wonderful stuff. And yeah, please CW, don't ruin this. And you know what, DC Universe as a service is basically dead. But I am glad it existed for the few years that it did to give us this and Doom Patrol and Harley Quinn.
I don't think it counts as few. I think we're only on a couple, barely.
I mean, I'm fudging the numbers a little bit, I'll be honest.
Few's a bit generous. Few implies 3 or 4, and I don't think we're there yet.
I don't know if we were on. I didn't know if we were on 2 or 3, so I thought I'll be generous and went to few. Could be couple. But if this is all it exists for, and it gives us these shows, and assuming that this isn't butchered on the CW, it was worth it. It was worth it all.
Sure, I suppose I can't argue with that. All things considered.
Because this wouldn't have existed on the CW outright from scratch like this. I mean, maybe it can retain what it has, but it would never have started like this.
I mean, I'm hopeful, just purely because I'm hoping they'll keep, if Johns is still show running and they're keeping the same team of writers, and maybe they do want it to stay as a summer show, against the others. Like I say, at the absolute worst, I see them extending it to 16 episodes, like Legends and Black Lightning. I don't think it goes to 22.
Yeah, I agree. And given the pacing that we've had this season, I think the writers could handle an extra couple without, without being feeling like filler or anything. I feel like there's room to breathe if they wanted to.
Even if they just do 3 standalone adventures like sprinkled through the season as little things, that'd be okay. I mean, if let's just say X villain comes to town, if that only happens a couple times a season, it's not that weird.
As long as they're still good episodes, and you don't just watch them and feel this is a filler one. Those one-off episodes can be really good. There are great examples of those episodes in a lot of network shows.
Yeah, so I'm hopeful, and I think the fear of CW ruining it's getting worse and worse because the show's getting better and better, and it's making it more terrifying.
that shows just the quality of this episode in particular. Let's say this is the one kind of before the end. It's the low-key episode. We have easily gone more than half an hour on this, just gushing over all of it.
Yeah, and it's funny because obviously, I'm not necessarily going to go out and recommend this to, if you come to our channel and you're here for Dark reviews or Mr. Robot reviews or Twin Peaks reviews, this isn't something that will convert anyone who's not, you have to want a bubbly teen superhero show, but if you want a bubbly teen superhero show and you want it to be good, this is about as good as we're going to get
This
ever.
is the one I can recommend out of all of them. For now. But it's head and shoulders above typically what anything the CW has ever done, quite frankly. I don't... I like this more than when Flash was at its best. Because even when Flash was at its best, it still had a lot of the CW problems. A lot of the time. It did, yeah.
Yeah.
And Arrow too, which it was never as good as Flash at its best. I think that's fair to say. Even Arrow's best to Flash's best, Flash was still better. but it had a lot of the same core problems.
Yeah. So, yeah. And I dare I say, like, I think it's kind of weird to compare it to Legends. And Legends, obviously, we've been saying for years is the best CW superhero show, but it's very different. But I think
it's so different in that is just an outright comedy show.
Yeah.
It's a 40-minute live action cartoon, and I love it for that.
Which means if this keeps up the quality, right? Because this is the sort of show where I can almost feel it in my bones that as long as it's not interfered with the CW and forced to conform to their style, this already feels like a show that gets better in season 2. It has that kind of feeling to it. Especially
because, the first half of this season was, fine, pretty good, showed promise, and I think it's fair to say that the promise is paying off already. But this back half has been really something quite great. And in theory, season 2, hits the ground running and doesn't have that first half problem of establishing the team. It can just get going, and that's a really common occurrence with a lot of older style network shows, right?
No, it is. Absolutely is. So I'm excited to see what the last 2 episodes bring. So we got 2 more weeks left of this, and the big fight, because the fights have also been very good throughout the season, and there's not been every episode, but there's been like a good 4 or 5 of them now that I've really enjoyed. And obviously, they're going to have at least one big one in the finale, probably the last 2 episodes, I'd guess. Even
I would suspect both. I think maybe even early on next episode will be the escape from who is it, Brainwave coming for them? I think it is. Yeah, it'll probably be the escape from them will be the early fight.
I think
you said the second episode will have them actually going in and trying to take them on to stop them doing
I think he said we, so I suspect he might actually be taking some of the other villains with him. So obviously not Icicle, but he might be taking Sportsmaster and Tigress. Oh, I don't know. Grundy. I feel like Grundy. I mean, maybe, but I feel like Grundy is maybe what they bust out in the second episode when there's like, the heroes actually may have a chance of beating us. Shit, open the cell. Like, open Grundy's door.
But I mean, I think that's how I can see it structured, where I think it'll be earlier on in the episode.
Sure.
Next time will be the fight, and that'll be the one for that episode, and then you'll have the big encounter, the big final encounter in the last episode.
Yeah.
But I mean, there was no fight this week.
I didn't miss it.
We still really enjoyed this episode. I never felt, this needed a fight.
No, not at all. It wasn't that kind of episode, and the emotional beats that I wanted to hit at the end, I thought they did. I have really very little to complain about in this episode. I mean, I guess the only thing to complain about really is that I was laughing really hard at the actor who's playing not Joel McHale, and I think it's because it's kind of this meta joke at this point, and I feel like the entire nature of the photos all season have kind of built up to this. So maybe it's like almost like I'm kind of enjoying it for being silly now, but it's not like it's been good in the sense where it's really good storytelling that I'm laughing at this actor looking so much like Joel McHale because he has to for this to work.
Yeah, which to be fair, he's a perfectly fine actor. I've definitely seen him on stuff in the past, and he's
he's not bad.
He does nothing wrong here. He does exactly what he's supposed to do all episode.
Yeah, I won't be mad if I never see him again though.
No, he's not like above and beyond, don't get me wrong, but he does nothing wrong, which is, sometimes the best thing you can ask for at a guest.
It depends if Johns wants to do Royal Flush Gang at some point, really, because if he does, then he'll be back, and it'll be like, oh, Courtney's father's in the villain team. That's a...
I could see the desire to do that, and given his scummy nature, it would kind of fit in.
Yeah. So, okay, this was maybe more of a part 2 thing than a part 1 thing for the finale, but Mike's clicking that pen, right? Like they're all going to be in a jam, and Mike's going to be the one who saves them all by clicking that pen.
Okay, the show has not earned my concern here, because it's been great, right? As we've just clearly established for the last 35 minutes.
Yes.
I'm concerned about how they get to the pen and him making a wish without it feeling contrived.
Does he always have to make a wish? Was that a thing in the cards?
Well, no, but he has to direct the genie to do something. And he usually has to, say the words.
Don't get me wrong. I can also see the possibility that it's not even a thing in the plot, but the post-credit scene, as it were, at the very end of the season is just him picking it up and like going to click it, and it just cuts or something. I could see that being like something. if they want to just tease it for next season. That's totally a possibility. But if they are going to do it, I mean, maybe he ends up with the others. Maybe like the family get kidnapped, but he ends up with like I'm thinking Beth specifically. Might tell him what the pen is or something. I don't know.
Could, but the goggles could recognize it, and that would be a use of the goggles I would not hate. So let me tell you that.
I don't know me anymore because they've established this is what they do now, and now we have rules to play within. That they've established them.
Yeah. No, I haven't even mentioned the goggles in episodes. I just meant that the goggles should recognize the pen.
Yes. Oh, the goggles will know what the pen is for sure. So no, it's a good episode, and it's been a surprisingly good season, and I actually have faith, given their pacing, given how they've had characters react to each other, villains included. I'm expecting some fun fights and some fun payoffs to everything. As for do any of the villains survive and stick around next season, I don't know. Hopefully Sportsmaster and Tigress, but we'll see.
I can see Dragon sticking around.
Oh sure, I can maybe see that too. Yeah,
I can see us losing Brainwave and Icicle.
I don't see Dragon King being the main villain next season, but I can see him still being there, and then whoever the new main villain is maybe takes him on under his wing or whatever.
Yeah, I can see him and Cindy sticking around.
Because maybe next season we'll do Injustice Society, or we'll do we're already doing that kind of.
This is the
I meant in the new version with like Johnny Sorrow. That was Injustice Gang. Is that what they called the comics?
Injustice Gang. Yeah, I think so.
Because Johnny Sorrow could be fun if they wanted to do that.
That would be terrifying in a way that I would love to see on this show right now, and I'm terrified to see on the CW.
Yeah. So there's potential. It depends what they want to do. Maybe they'll go more pulpy, or maybe not. But anyway, that is episode 11 of Stargirl. So let us know what you thought of this one in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. Liking is very important on YouTube. It lets YouTube know that we're worth recommending. It is the easiest way to support us and the cheapest way to support us. But you can support us as well with some monies over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. You can give us as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your troubles. And we'll warm and fuzzy on the inside. I said we'll, not feel. But you know what? It's fine. You got what I meant. That is that. Get us on Twitter at mail_fuzz for channel updates. And otherwise, check out the DC Comics podcast that we have with Matt called Comics from the Multiverse, where we talk about DC Comics every week. There's no Stargirl comic right now, unfortunately. But
if you go over to the Comics from the Multiverse YouTube channel, we are working through JSA.
Yes, we are, which has Courtney. Not our first appearance, but in the early days of Courtney. Sure. She's not even called Stargirl yet. She's called the Star Spangled Kid, which was the first moniker she took before she changed the name to a much more phonetically pleasing and easier to say name.
Yes. I guarantee it was just because the letterer was sick of typing.
Probably. Stargirl just sounds like a proper superhero name, though.
It does, yeah.
So there you go. That is us. Thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?